Does your workday grind leave you downtrodden and empty? Are you feeling anxious about the coming holiday to the point where you're unsure you can cope? And does it all make you want to go super sane on the whole world? Hold on, wait a minute, take a chill pill. Essay here, and when I'm not sounding like a complete ignoramus on the computer, I'm also a published author, and I have a deal for you. Don't miss out on the thrilling and captivating American book series Glitch. This one-of-a-kind series combines literary fiction and crime, creating an adrenaline-fueled adventure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Available now on Kindle or paperback. Grab your copy today at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your local bookstore. You won't regret it. The links are below in the description. And I'm not some one-hit wonder either. I got other books coming down the pike. So if I don't lose my mind and do something crazy...
Nation, Lois. For a minute there, you almost had me convinced. For a minute.
Bye-bye, baby.
You'll see those books soon enough. Now let's get back to the video. Hello again. Essay here. Just recently, Norman Lear died. You say, who the hell is that? Well, if you're from my generation, you know exactly who that was. For a brief period in history, the 1970s, he was probably one of the most prolific TV writer-producers around. Indeed, he had a long history in television. Indeed, one of the first series that he ever did that was like really big was the Andy Griffin Show. Yeah, I watched that show as a kid. In fact, Barney Fife was my favorite character because the guy was such a moron and a doofus, and yet he kept his job being the deputy sheriff. You know, Robin to Andy Griffin's Batman. And then he wanted to make Love American Style, which I saw in reruns. Okay, show. And then he went on to make The Jeffersons, The Maude, Sanford and Son, which I really liked. I liked that show. That show was hilarious. And a few others, such as Mary Hart and Mary Hartman. But the show that he's probably known best for is All in the Family. You know, with Carol O'Connor. I watched that show as a kid when it was new, and I thought it was amusing. Always calling Carl Reiner. No, it was Rob Reiner, his son. I keep getting the two confused. They look so much alike. Yeah, I kept calling him Meathead all the time because he was a bit of a moron. And but he kept him around because he was married to his daughter, being played by Sally Struthers. Okay, kid. But then the show kind of wore its welcome because one by one the various people who were on the show, including Maureen Stapleton that played Carol Connor's wife, they eventually left the show. And Carol Connor's character, who was, let's just be blunt, he was a bit of a bigot. But hey, in the 1970s, who wasn't, right? They tried to morph the show into a new series called Archie Bunker's Place, but it didn't last by the time they finally wrapped the show up in the early 80s. But this video is really not about Norman Lear. No. This video is about the entertainment industry in general, and how it seems as though there's no good ideas in entertainment anymore. And of course, anyone who's lived long as I have has probably seen their share of reboots and remakes. I mean, it gets kind of dull after a while. I mean, how many times can you watch Spider-Man, right? Because I remember the original Spider-Man TV show from the 1960s. Yeah, you can look it up. ABC. I think it was like 1966, 67. Yeah, it was a TV show. Animated show. And then they rebooted it in the late 70s, except it was a live action. Didn't last, only lasted one season. And then, of course, anyone who is familiar with the ones that Sam Raimi did, good films. I like them films. Those films were good. But then they wouldn't stop. Sam Raimi made 3 films and left, and then they rebooted it and called it The Amazing Spider-Man with that, then, what's that kid's name? Garfield? And so that didn't last. And then he cranked out some new ones with this new kid whose name I can't recall. And they tried to basically fold it into the MCU. And then the MCU fell apart, which... Yeah, that's what happens when the big man drops dead. Because it's kind of funny when you think about it, because Marvel, the comic strip, had been around forever. I mean, it was always playing second fiddle to DC. And then finally, oh God, Stan Lee, that's right. Yeah, Stan Lee, he drops dead, and then the whole MCU falls apart. Yeah, because I'm pretty certain if he was still alive, you never would have saw that ridiculous Marvels film. Nope, never would have happened. In fact, some people mock the MCU nowadays so much, they call it the M-she-U, S-H-E. Why? Because you also have a stupid, what is it, She-Hulk, attorney at law. Yeah. Talk about shitting the bed and then smeared all over your damn TV screen. And supposedly they're giving it a second season. Really? I mean, at least the people over there at Disney realized they had totally crapped the bed with the Marvels, and guess what? They are not going to be back for a sequel. I'm pretty certain of that. Not if you spent over $300 million just to make the film, not promoting it, just making the film, and then it makes like less than $100 million. I think it made like 60. Yeah, that was in the United States. It didn't say how much it made overseas. Probably nothing, because what can you say? Girl power stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway. When it comes to these reboots, it's a symptom of a much bigger problem. These people just don't have good ideas. They just don't. They keep remaking and rebooting over and over again. And I'm thinking, why can't you be like Christopher Nolan? And then you say, oh, but Christopher Nolan made 3 Batman films. Yeah, and Batman's been around for a long time. True. Hey, I watched the original Adam West Batman. It was funny. I liked it. And I have to admit, Catwoman, especially Julie Newmar, yeah, I definitely liked her. She was yummy. But anyway, yeah. And then they had the Batman, the animated series in the 90s. Great show. I think it even won an Emmy for an Emmy. Yeah, I think it was a daytime Emmy because it wasn't a nighttime show. Yeah. Because it was really good. Really great writing. And of course, it didn't help that Mark Hamill was doing the voice of the Joker. Yeah, great. I love that part. So, yeah. They've made multiple Batman films. Now, that last one that they put together, somebody called The Batman, was that any good? Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, Christopher Nolan didn't make it, but I have to admit, it was really terrible. But still, what can you say? It is what it is. But anyhow, this rebooting and remaking stuff isn't just an American phenomenon. It happens overseas too. Indeed, recently I discovered a story. Actually, it's a film, Spanish film, called Second Origin. It sounded interesting. In fact, it reminded me a lot of The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, an old film that Harry Belafonte made back in the 50s, which itself was based on a book called The Purple Cloud, which was written, I think it was written like 1901. You can look up the book. That book was actually pretty fascinating. In fact, I would love to see actually someone adapt the book as it was written, because that book was very interesting. About a purple cloud suddenly appears on the earth and it circles the earth repeatedly, and everyone that gets caught in the purple cloud dies. And in the end, only a handful of people survived. One was a girl caught in a prison in Turkey, and one was some English dude, and the third guy was a sailor man. Yeah, well, anyway, this second origin film, which was based on a book, came out in the 70s called The Transcript of Second Origin. It had already been made into a TV series back in Spain, back in the 80s. And then they decided to make a film version, I think about 8 years ago. Was the film any good? I only saw part of it, and it was one of those typical post-apocalyptic films. But it was focused on primarily these two people who were basically kids when the apocalypse happened, and they basically grew up basically taking care of themselves with no parents around. And you say, oh, this sounds like Lord of Flies. Well, strangely enough, it wasn't, at least according to the original book. The original book, it basically focused on the girl who, see, I'm sitting there giving you spoilers. Yeah, let's just say this. The girl basically raises the little boy, and when they become adults, they become a couple, and then they discover that they're not alone. Apparently, there were other survivors. But of course, in the original book, it was supposedly space aliens that wiped out most of the Earth's population. But in the film version, there was some kind of solar flare that happened and basically killed all the people. In fact, that basically that element of the storyline was lifted from an old Peter Graves film from the 70s called Where Are All the People? You should look up that film. I think it might be on YouTube. Yeah, look it up. What happened to Where Are All the People Gone? I think it came out in 1974, where Peter Graves and his family was exploring some cave up there in Sierra Nevada, and they thought an earthquake happened, but when they came outside, all the people disappeared. It was just their clothes and this weird white powder, and they didn't know what happened. But then they found out that all the animals had gone crazy, like rabid dogs and stuff like that. And over time they figured out what happened. Some kind of weird solar flare happened and basically barbecued everybody who was outside. It was a pretty depressing story, but very entertaining. You should look it up sometime. But anyway, these reboots just won't stop. I mean, for example, how many people remember Frasier? Remember that show? But how about Monk, that goofy show? Remember that one? But guess what? They're rebooting those two shows with the original cast. Why? I mean, you can't think of that Kelsey Grammer can't think of some new character, some new TV show. I mean, people tend to forget. Frasier was originally a spinoff of the old Cheers show, and the Cheers show was an original story, made up from scratch. You mean they can't do that? Yeah, sad, ridiculous. Now, of course, for me personally, I have no problem rebooting a show that may have ended abruptly with no resolution. Like, for example, how many people remember The Adventures of Briscoe County? Yeah, it was on Fox back in the early 90s. It was only on for, I think, about a season and a half, and it ended abruptly. I wish they would go back and revisit that show with Bruce Campbell. And I like Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell's funny. And the show itself was a bit of like a weird kind of adventure comedy kind of show. But yeah, they could have revisited that. They could have. I wouldn't mind if they revisit that show and pick up where they left off, because even though it was basically a cowboy show, it was sort of like the old TV show The Wild Wild West. People who are my age probably remember that show. In fact, you probably remember the Will Smith movie version, which, oh my God, uh, 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 bad. But Briscoe County was basically a comedy version of that, and it was pretty good. It was very entertaining. And then the show just abruptly ended in midstream, even though it had this great subplot involving time travel and people from the far future manipulating the past. I like that aspect of it. And then there was another show that also came on Fox called Space Above and Beyond. Great show. It was basically Star Wars, except it involved Earth and involved not some galactic empire, but some weird aliens that the humans basically end up getting caught in a fight with. And it had a subplot involving supposedly a war that had occurred on Earth before the aliens showed up, involving humans versus AI. And the humans defeated the AI, but they had to use clones. And then before you say Attack of the Clones, yeah. And believe me, you can look it up. I don't know if it's available on video, but look it up, Space Above and Beyond, and focus on the subplot, because the subplot is almost like a cut and paste of Attack of the Clones, except this TV show came out like a full decade before Lucas was even thinking about Attack of the Clones, as far as I can tell. And indeed, I was thinking when Attack of the Clones came out, like a decade later, and I said, damn, this is just basically the subplot of Space Above and Beyond. Where in Space Above and Beyond, the AI basically tried to take over the Earth, and it was building these killer robots that were trying to wipe out humanity, and the humans, just like in the Star Wars prequel films, the humans basically built an army of clones to wipe out the AI. So yeah, what can you say? Lucas obviously must have been watching that TV show and said, I think I should put this in my Star Wars prequel film. Hey, you can't blame him for using a great subplot. But yeah, the TV show ended abruptly in the middle of the fight between the humans and the aliens, and I would love them to go back and finish that story arc. And then of course there's Babylon 5. And you said, but wait a second, didn't they finish Babylon 5? Well, technically yes, but then they had a follow-on show called Crusade, where it picked up where Babylon 5 left off. And it only lasted one season, then it ended abruptly, where the humans were now on a crusade trying to find the cure for the Shadows? If you remember Babylon 5, you know who the Shadows are. How they contaminated the Earth and everyone was dying, and therefore they had built a brand new spaceship. I think it was basically based on, the Borlon technology. Of course, if you saw Babylon 5, know who the Borlons are. Borlon tech, and they're basically going out trying to chase after the Shadows, who, after they got defeated, remember in Babylon 5, they basically fled the galaxy, and they were going to go after them, try to find a cure for this weird cootie that they left behind. And the show ended abruptly without resolution. And I said, man, that sucks. But yeah, I wouldn't mind if they revisit those two shows and give us what's the word for it? A proper conclusion. But what's going on now is just ridiculous. I mean, they keep remaking these damn TV shows, and I'm thinking, please just stop. Because, as I mentioned before, Christopher Nolan, he's not known for making reboots and remakes. he just keeps on cranking out one new idea after another. In fact, one of my favorite stories of his is The Prestige. I mean, The Prestige, oh my God. That is a Twilight Zone episode. And if you watch The Prestige, you know what I'm talking about, especially the ending. Ending's marvelous. Love it. Great. I mean, it just gives you chills how he basically wrote that story. Yeah, I like that. But what can you say? Not everyone working in entertainment industry can be as talented as Christopher Nolan. Too bad. I mean, because I like Ridley Scott. Unfortunately, Ridley Scott, he kind of messed up the bed with Alien, because if you saw Prometheus and then Covenant, you understand what I'm talking about. Because anyone who saw the original Alien film and pays attention knows that when you apply what's in the first Alien film with the Covenant and of course Prometheus, it doesn't fit. Because if you saw those films, you understand he wrote those films to try to say, oh, the original alien spaceship that the original crew Nostromo found had been sitting on that planet, looked like for centuries. But then he turns around and tries to retcon the whole narrative, saying, oh, but it hasn't been really since more like last week. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I mean, because if you're paying attention to the timeline in both Prometheus and Covenant, it's almost happening around the same time Ripley and the crew Nostromo are leaving Earth. And I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, Ridley Scott, I don't know what you're thinking, dude, but you're messing up the narrative by doing what you're doing. Now, how's he going to fix the narrative? I don't know. Maybe he'll try to lift something from Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, because if you saw that film, he basically fixed the problem of the wormhole. Because remember, if you saw that film, there was a wormhole appeared, just outside of, I think it was Saturn. And of course, when Matthew McConaughey and his crew goes through it, they eventually end up on some other planets, and they find out a time delineation occurred. And even though those other planets had been, they sent explorers out there like last week, by the time his crew got out there, centuries had passed. Yeah, I think that maybe Ridley Scott might try to fix the timeline issue between the original Alien film and these prequel films that he's been slapping together, by try to claim, the temporal delineation. In other words, even though Earth time, the alien spacecraft, which Ripley and her crew and Nostromo are going to find, probably crashed, like last week, Earth time, because of temporal delineation, several centuries had passed on that alien film when she and her crew show up. I mean, that'd be one way of fixing it, but I don't know if he's going to do that. And in the meantime, he's wasting his time with, are you ready? Are you ready? A reboot, or I should say a remake of Gladiator. And of course, if you saw Gladiator, you remember that that big dude, Maximus, he dies in the end. And I'm thinking, how are you going to make a sequel when the main character died in the first film? Huh? And from what I've read, it's going to focus on his son. I think, if you remember, there was some small subplot where I think he had, an adopted son. And I remember that scene. And apparently this new Gladiator film is going to be focusing on him. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess that might work. But really, dude, do we really need a sequel to Gladiator? Really? Personally, I don't think so. No. Yeah. No. I think Scott should focus on something new because the guy he ain't 20 anymore. I mean, the brother he's like in his 80s now. So it's almost time for him to hang up his spurs or hand off some and if and of course you say, but what about the third film after Covenant? Yeah, well, they're supposed to be working on Alien Romulus, but personally, from what I've read about that, it has no real connection to the Prometheus and Covenant. So I'm wondering, what the hell is this? I don't know. But anyway, Norman Lear, he didn't have this problem. No, if you look at his repertoire, he was not known for making reboots of his old TV shows. No, once he made Andy Griffin's show, he was done. And you say, what about Mayberry RFD? Well, I don't think he made that. I think someone else made that after. And it was basically kind of a sequel, but none of the original people were in it. So there you go. In fact, I always wondered why they call it Mayberry RFD. I think it's an old term from the 19th, 20th century. RFD meaning rural federal district. I mean, I don't know what that means. I think it's from the 19th century, back when they used to have territories before they had American states. Except the thing is, maybe RFD took place in the modern era, or at least modern era as far as the 1960s are concerned, but whatever. But yeah, Norman Lear, he didn't make any sequels to any of his TV shows. Just wasn't his thing. But now that he's dead, guess what? Guess what a few people are talking about now? Are you ready? They're talking about rebooting All in the Family. Really? Oh, and it gets better. They want to basically modernize it for a new audience. And I'm thinking, oh, no. No, no, no. I mean, can you imagine a woke Archie Bunker? Oh, please stop. I mean, when these damn people in the entertainment business talk about remaking something for a new audience, that basically is a code for what did the Cartman say in the Pandaverse? Put a chick in it and making it lame. Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if they reboot All in the Family and make Archie Bunker a woman? Making it woke? Oh. Or making her a lesbian or something? Oh, man. Oh. Oh, just, oh. I mean, it gives me acid reflux just thinking about it. Well, whoever these knuckleheads are talking about All in the Family reboot, hopefully they just drop the idea. And hopefully the people over at CBS that originally showed the original All in the Family won't even consider it. Yeah. Yep. Hopefully, we will not see a new Archie Bunker that's that's female and is lame. Yeah. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, because before he died, Norman Lear supposedly said in an interview that if the show was on today, Archie Bunker would likely be a Trump supporter and a right winger. And I'm thinking, yeah, because if you watch the old TV show, I think Archie Bunker, I think, was a Nixon supporter. And Nixon, yeah, he was Republican, but when you look at Nixon's politics, he was actually kind of middle of the road. I mean, he definitely was no Ronald Reagan or even, oh my God, a Goldwater fan. Yeah. So, yeah. Norman Lear's dead, and hopefully none of his old shows will be rebooted. God willing. Yep. Unfortunately, there's no good ideas in Hollywood. So if you have old copies of TV Guide, yeah, the original little booklets they used to make back in the 20th century, skim through them once in a while, just at random, and then point out an old primetime TV show and ask yourself, has this show been rebooted, or is it, or will it be rebooted in the near future? Because who knows? Maybe in your future you might see a reboot of MASH, or Miami Vice, or the X-Files. Yeah. And you say, but wait a second, don't they still crank out X-Files movies and TV shows? Yeah. But what can you say? David Dacovey, he's kind of wobbly on continuing playing the Fox Mulder character in perpetuity. So, God willing, it doesn't happen, but we could very well see a reboot of the X-Files in your lifetime. It can happen. I hope it doesn't, but it may happen. Well, I guess that's all I have to say on reboots and remakes, and that's my opinion.